what are the problems that you're solving? Like one of my clients, they're telling when they're prospecting or building relationships, they focus around, hey, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? Here's a possibility. Here's some of the things that can happen. Here's the future, versus addressing immediately addressable and relevant problems that they're facing today. Because some people don't want to solve the deep tissue issue; they just want to solve the band-aid issue.
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I'm so excited. We have a special guest today and we have a very special conversation today. I've been talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and, the ones that have been seeing a shift in sales in terms of downward. It's interesting when I ask them what's causing it, they'll go, oh, it's the election year. It's the economy. Things are different from COVID years. And at the same time, I'm seeing companies that are killing it, that are having still their best years ever. And today's conversation is surrounded on the topic of how do you create that intentional revenue, right? To create that intentional profitability. And we have a special guest today, and he's joining us. His name is Raul Hernandez. And Raul is a growth strategist who specializes with partnering with founders and with strategies that enhance performance, that allows businesses to scale profitably and be able to serve more clients without sacrificing their lifestyles. He's helped companies double their growth, in some cases 5x their growth, generating millions in revenues and also building their personal wealth with that. He teaches entrepreneurs to lead in-house revenue producing teams that generate sales of $50 million plus in 1 year. And he's trained thousands of entrepreneurs through his workshops and events. And he's also the author of a book called The Growth Plan Book. So I'm very excited about having Raul today join us to talk about increasing your revenue in a time where, maybe it's not the election year. Maybe there's some things that we need to switch with our strategy. So please join me in welcoming Raul to our platform. Hey, Raul, how are you doing today?
I am energized to be here, and I'm excited to speak with you today.
Great. So first of all, our audience, we love background story. We love to find out how our guests got to where they are, what drove their interest to do this thing.
Oh yeah, I've been always interested in entrepreneurship since 2011 or 2012, and been starting multiple businesses, startups, and incubators since then. It was in 2015 or 16 that I started a I was looking to start a software company. It turned out to be a marketing company with a founder that I never met in person. He was in Brooklyn. I'm in San Diego. We're still friends to this day. He actually came to the wedding, and we started a marketing company. And we had about just a small boutique shop, about 19 clients. And then we were like, this is not for us. I wanted to be more in the work. So I started helping more digital agencies online. And we frankly, it was like a fast track working with industry leaders, coaching their businesses, supporting their staff, coaching their actual clients, and seeing behind the scenes of multiple offers in the marketplace, multiple businesses in the marketplace, multiple entrepreneurs. And it's cool because I was able to serve the company itself, but also all the clients and the portfolios that we were managing. From there, helped to triple an agency less than 1 year. We went from 7 to 21, almost multi-million in top line revenue. And then in 22, I joined an in-house team to lead a revenue team. And we did about 50 in a year. And I was overseeing 70 souls at that time. So lots of learnings, lots of punches in the face and learning the hard way. And I think dialing in those perspectives into a framework that's easily digestible and applicable regardless of industry, but ideally with some nuances of how to adapt this to multiple businesses.
I love it. I love it. So lately, like I mentioned earlier, I'm seeing a lot of conversation of companies telling me that their revenue just isn't there in terms of what it's been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And, as a fractional CFO and CPA, I get the privilege of looking behind the scenes at many companies. And I'm seeing quite as many of companies have their best year ever as ones that are telling me they're having their worst year ever. And it's a very interesting dichotomy. So first of all, why is that? Why are we seeing people that are saying they're having their worst year ever, but we're still seeing people having their best year ever in just equal proportions?
I wish I knew all the macros and micros in the economy. I know there's reality what's happening in different industries, technology shifts, especially in the business services or in the online shift. So there are real changes. the rise of intelligence, machine learning has affected some of my personal clients and just the way that we're shifting our approach to the marketplace. But it doesn't mean that we have to shift in sales. I know that the 2020, everything changed, but it also there was some expectations for higher salaries, higher raises, higher prices. And then now I think maybe this is where it would have been normally. We're getting shocked that it wasn't where it used to be. So there's all these factors. But then there's also the one that you just mentioned is the perception. Because I have a client and she was also mentioned, hey, it's election year because she's in DC. Like 100,000 people leave and go from this and move depending on who wins the election. But I'm like, that's like less than 1% of your population. So there is that thing that what can we control? Because we can't frankly control every single macroeconomic shift or the cutting of interest rates or the raising of interest rates. What can we control? We control how we view ourselves, our teams, our situations, and our future, and choose how we're going to behave or act or enter into the present moment. And when we're looking at our companies and our organizations, what we can control, the framework that I want to share with today is around maximizing profitability per client and or net new client that you work with, so that you can control your profit and making sure that whatever sale you make next is one, profitable, two, a fit, and three, enables you to either explore or compound your learnings on a new customer segment or an existing customer segment. And I can dive more into what that looks like. But I think we should just focus on what can we control and who are you opting in to believe, or what outside factors are you going to, hand over your freedom to. So it's mostly let's regain that back, be here present, and then let's focus on the actual things that we can control.
Got it. So focusing on the things that we control. And it's interesting because, even in industries where people have traditionally felt like they should be doing better, a lot of times it's just switching their approach is what we've found.
Mm-hmm.
And saying it, it might be a longer sales cycle, but it's about putting a little bit more effort in too, in order to recoup those numbers. And so, Raul, in terms of like things that we control, let's talk about the things that we can control that in the areas that you're seeing people hit it out of the ballpark in this economy. What are the things that they are doing to do that?
So there's two factors. There's the thinking and the doing, and the doing are the tactics. I think even myself, sometimes we get stuck on the tactics of I gotta run this sales program, I gotta do this number of outreach, I gotta have this presentation type, I gotta use this, whatever proposal sequence. Those are great and those work. I think the key thing that I want to focus on today is the actual what I call the sales enablement or the empowerment of the sales, regardless if it's you doing the sales, your VP of sales doing the sales, your sales team, or your sales reps. This is the thinking before they actually execute. And the three key things around this framework are around your customer segments, business case or the value, and then your unique mechanism. And we're going to dive into those three together here. And this is around you, just like I mentioned for the listener, for you to set the framing of how you're going to approach your current reality, your current situation. It's the same thing for you and your market. How are you going to have them see your products or services presented in a different light where you can serve more people, add more value, but at the same time, increase profitability? And I know this sounds like it's stretched kind of crazy. What am I talking about? My clients are doing it, I'm doing it, it works. But the key thing is, how do you implement this in your business? So when we look at your customer segments and you're looking at who am I actually serving, we might be serving multiple either industries or client types. For example, I have a client, they're actually out of Canada. They have multiple, like an incredible amount of industries that they're serving, and they have clients that are spending significant dollars with them in their lifetime value. But they're serving too many customers. So I think the key thing is to identify out of all these either customer segments, demographics, who do I add the value the most? Like who sees the importance of the problems that we're solving for them, and it's way more valuable for them. You also want to attach that to your business goals and your strategy. Like who are you and your team more comfortable working with, or that you enjoy working with? Because culture is a real thing. One of my other former clients and good friends, he changed his entire company culture to match their clients, to be a performance first, very aggressive, like SWAT team for them to actually go in, support their clients, get the job done. But the culture became like you had to have a certain level of tolerance of stress, because if you can't handle that level of performance, then you're not going to be able to survive in that culture. That's his style, that's his approach. But he's matching the culture to the business model, to the customers. So I think for you, he's got to match specifically who am I serving? Who do I add the most value? And then from there, also matching it, who does my team, who can we support the best? Because it's a whole relationship from becoming a client to potentially offboarding, ascending to a different product or services, or just, closing doors saying, thank you for the experience. So that's the first part there. I can pause before we dive into the second parts if you have any questions.
Yeah, no, this is great. So really the first step is in this economy is realizing that there's that temptation to serve everybody, right? To get more volume, get more numbers. But in reality, we need to take a different approach and really start to niche down to who are we the best fit for, right? Who are we going to get the best results for and be happy doing the work for? And which is very counter, right? Intuitive in many cases, right? I mean, people are like trying to grow sales and you're right, Earl, in that, you've now got AI models that are out there that can eventually going to be able to service the masses. And so it's important to take that step back and figure out who you want to be and give that service that AI cannot give.
Exactly. Or even in industries where AI is going to take another 10 to 15 years with regulation to break into. So it's all a strategy piece. And you mentioned niching down, like this is a vertical way to approach the niching. What we're going to dive into is also a horizontal approach. But the second step here, this is like a Venn diagram, is the business case. And when I say business case, it's what are the problems that you're solving? Like one of my clients, they're telling, when they're prospecting or building relationships, they focus around, hey, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? Here's a possibility. Here's some of the things that can happen. Here's the future, versus addressing immediately addressable and relevant problems that they're facing today. Because some people don't want to solve the deep tissue issue. They just want to solve the band-aid issue. So the key thing is to identify, okay, if my customer segment, let's just say you have 3 top industries that you serve or 3 demographics. Like here are my top 3 demographics. They not only like to work with us, they spend the most with us and we can service them at the highest level. Well, what are they coming in for? Like even if you're running like a shop or you're a surgeon, like what are they actually coming in for? They're not just coming in for the 1 or 2 things. They might be coming in for an idea that they think of a problem that they have. What are those things? And you want to start listing these things out, because when you start listing out the actual problems that they're trying to face, then you can work backwards and say, okay, cool. What happens if they don't solve this problem? What changes in their life? Those answers now become your marketing. And then from there, you dive into, okay, what solutions, either services or products, do we sell that can actually solve those problems? Now you're matching your product to problem fit. And then the fourth thing is to look at, okay, what are the case studies? How do we prove that we can do this? And if you've been around in business for a while, this is an easy part, but this is an important part, because every buyer has 3 questions. What is it? Does it work? Does it work for me, or will it work for me? So what is it? They're looking, okay, what do you actually do? And if some teams may not be communicating this effectively, your sales team may not be communicating, what do you actually do? If it's too complicated to understand, if you're speaking in a language that your customers don't comprehend, which happens more than often than we think, that's the number one thing. The second is, what does it do for me? So this is what we're diving into. What is it actually going to do for your ideal customer segments and your highest market segments? And then will it work for me? You can give case studies. And then here, this is where you start leveraging your sales mechanism, depending if you're doing a one-to-many sale. Either you're doing lunch and learns, after office workshops, getting people in there, if you're doing webinars. And then the other approach is the one-on-one sales consultations. So it just depends if it's the one-to-many or the one-to-one. So I'll pause there.
So first of all, it's the next thing is really getting into, once you figure out who you're best going to serve, being able to speak their language, right? And understand their problem. Yes, they might come to you for a band-aid issue, but there's usually a deeper issue, right? I think a lot of times we give the band-aid issue to reduce the price, right? But we're actually looking for the permanent resolution to this band-aid issue. And being able to dig down into that permanent resolution is so that band-aid issue doesn't keep happening is really the way to go with that.
Yeah, and sometimes clients don't even want to solve the permanent issue. Like I had a real story last week. A client was making an offer, And the prospect was, I just want this band-aid issue solved, but you're offering me that plus more. I'm not ready for more. They didn't close the sale. It was an example of like, oh, that's interesting. There was a lack. We should have just sold exactly what they wanted, build a relationship, and then from there walk them down the line saying, here's what else we can do for you. So there's different ebbs and flows, and that could be a reason that sales may not be happening in your organization, but it's just a real case study of like failure. But that steps into the third module here is your unique mechanism. Because if you start saying that you're the number one in your town, you're the best in this thing, like everyone else says that, like, oh, we're the most ethical, or you'll have an honest price. I'm like, well, everyone says that, that means no one's saying that, which means it means nothing. So what do you actually do that's different? And here I want to lead with two different dichotomies of product based solutions, or project based solutions. And I'll dive into what that means in just a second. But we really need to nail down specifically what makes you unique. The best way to answer this question is say the name of your company, then the industry that you're in, and then from there say, we're the only X that does fill in the blank. What do you do differently? You start saying, oh, like I'm a growth consultant. I do growth, whatever. Like, hey, everyone else says that. What makes you different? Or like, oh, you do fractional CFL. Like, okay, what makes you different? So there's different approaches, and this is where again your customer segments, your branding, your positioning, your backstory, all these little things that make up the big thing come into play. But I really want to dial this in based on the solutions or the products that you sell, because when you're selling on the front end a product based solution, these are sold. This is where you can go to market and make sales pretty quickly because you're hitting a dopamine rush. You're hitting a pain point. It's like, hey, you got this problem. We got a solution. Do you want the solution? Obviously, it's not as brutal as that, but it's essentially that. Hey, are you facing this problem? What's costing you to not fix that problem? Does it make sense for us to maybe set up a 15, 30-minute conversation to dive into that problem, potentially look at solutions, and then present them ways to solve that problem? But when you have project-based solutions or services, these are bought. They're not sold. You can't just push, hey, I got these suite of services. Let me just push them down your throat. It's really hard to do that. That's where the relationship comes in. That's where the networking comes in. That's where the higher end deals come in. That's where you have to potentially, if you like golfing, I may not be the best golfer, the scratch golf, you hit the ball and like a scratch my head, where'd it go? You might have to do those things. But the whole idea is those are relationship based, but the best way to build relationship is to sell a product based solution. Build that relationship so they can see what does it actually look like to work with you. And this is a small dopamine hit. This is a small instant solution. Wow, this person's amazing. Wow, their staff, delighted me, or they were great on the follow up, or they were great when I walked in. I got a little new client kit, whatever it might be. But it's building that relationship, and you can see that the product or project based falls under your unique mechanism. What makes you different? Is it your proprietary, your IP? Is it how you approach the solution? Is it your unique position in the marketplace? Is it your backstory? Is it because you can relate? Is it, frankly, it might be you're the only one that speaks a certain language in that community and they want to go with you. It can be that simple, but that is the product matching to the business cases, the actual problems that they're facing, because they need to get their problems solved. Customers only care about their problem. They don't care about all of your branding. They care about their problem matched to who are your best customers. And when you do this work, sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but it's not that bad. But when you do this work, you remove friction in go to market and your actual hooks and angles in your marketing strategies. Your inbound becomes a bit smoother. Your outbound becomes way smoother because now you're focusing on net new relationships, cold relationships, warm relationships. And the best warm relationships are paying clients. And then you're also focusing on past clients and referrals and potential partners. And as you start taking the actions, like we started from the very beginning, all the tactics, the things that you were already doing, with this new framework and this approach, it's going to make those things work even better. It's like lubricating or removing or shining the engine, so then now it's going to work pretty well.
I love that. So that's an interesting approach to it for the guys that are seeing a decrease in sales and you want to start bringing in that influx of customers, right? Uh, a great way to do that is to meet your customer where they are, right? Meet them with that band-aid issue, like Raul says. I'll give an example. I went to a jewelry store and I just needed to get a ring fixed, right? I needed some prongs strengthened. And I ended up buying a whole nother piece just because I went to get it fixed and I was sitting there for like hours, right? Waiting for them to fix it. And of course, with time you end up doing things that you didn't think you were going to do. But it's being available to you. Maybe we start with an entry level product, right? And we see what else we can do and have that opportunity to show them what else we can do and upsell from there. It's a great idea to do that with.
Yeah, and even though you may not be in the online space, I call that a viral offer, because virality means that it's being shared, and the best marketing is word of mouth. So if you create some sort of offering, it's like that front end simple piece that friends share with friends, and they text it or they say, "Hey, I had this problem." It's like, "Oh, did you go see Sally? She's got your back," or whatever. Or like, "Go see John," or "Go see Edmund." When you start creating that front, you'll know it'll hit when it starts being referred and shared, and you did not spend money on advertising it. It's when your customers start sharing that. That's where you know you hit it, and that's where you do put your money in. How can I increase and amplify the awareness of this offering and this problem? Because from there, if you can bring in someone for, like in your example, a simple fix comes out with a brand new piece. If you can create that into predictability, then you have an opportunity.
Exactly, exactly. So, Raul, in terms of things going wrong, right? So now that we've identified our ideal customer, now that we've realized we need to meet them where they are in some cases in order to bring in new folks and generate that interest, where does it go wrong? Where do you see entrepreneurs go wrong in this cycle?
There's a few areas where we can go wrong. The first is the wanting to sell your services and not solutions, or your products and not solutions, and I'll dive into what that means. The other one is just the overemphasis on tactics and focusing straightly on the doing, less of the thinking, which is common. And then the third is when you're selling high ticket, maybe 6 or 7 figure relationships, to be uh, maybe they don't go wrong, but some of my clients are nervous. So I think it's just like the belief. There's a belief factor in there. Those are probably the top three. And then the fourth could be around, usually it's around just finding that unique front end viral, or just like that band-aid offering, and testing that and testing it incorrectly, and just wanting to put a lot of money behind testing that versus the lowest hanging fruit.
That analysis paralysis.
Yeah, and we can dive into any of those, whichever one you think would be most
Yeah,
valuable for
let's
the
they're all
audience.
really good. Let's start with the first one.
All right. So when you're developing these pieces, or you're developing the strategy, and you're focusing strictly on tactics, I think it's just a human tendency. One of my founders, he he knows this. He knows he has to focus on, like, hey, every project has to be profitable, but there's also that tendency, and it's a normal fear of, like, we just need to make more sales, even though they're like a team of 40, they're financially very well off, like very doing very well financially, but there's always that like nagging like back of brain, make sales, gotta make sales, gotta make sales. So you let the wrong people in, even though you know that wrong person is going to be net negative in the first 2 months because of the work that needs to happen, the onboarding, etc. So I think there's that focusing on the tactics too much, and then that self control, the self restraint. But I think that's a learning process, and I can't say that it's perfect because I've done that as well. So I just think it's part of the process. But knowing that tendency, at least being conscious around that tendency versus just being in react mode, can allow you to say, okay, you know what, that sale, great, we did the sale. Yeah, they're going to be net negative first maybe 60 days, maybe 45 days, maybe if they work with you 30 days. But accepting that, moving forward, but knowing to control and restrain, just leaning too hard in the tactics. The second one, this one's funny because it's like we go through this work, and some of my clients were rewriting their sales page, and we're working with them how to reposition. And they're like, let me sell my services. In reality, no one cares about your services. No one wants to buy them. They want to buy a solution. And when you reframe the services that you have as an actual solution, like we talked about, the business cases for the most valuable person and your unique mechanism, we start selling it. Here's the thing that it'll do for you. Here are the outcomes, versus here's our process. Here's everything we're going to do for you. Here's the suites, the Chinese menu of services. And I kid you not, I've had a Chinese menu sent to me to select what to buy. I'm like, why am I doing this? It, no one wants to buy service. They want to buy solutions. They want to buy an on ramp. I'm here in San Diego, and I was telling this to a client. He's a doctor, a psychologist here in San Diego, and I was telling because he was following one of these models around how do you convey the future to your ideal clients. And I'm not sure if anyone's been to San Diego, but there's an island called Coronado. That's where the Navy's at. And you cross this Coronado Bridge. It's a beautiful, huge bridge. And then you go to Petco Park, and we're Padres fans, San Diego here. And I was telling him, like, imagine you are on Coronado Island and people are sitting on the grass. You're not going to sell them the bridge. You're not going to sell them, here's Coronado Bridge. Look at the cement we used. Did you know that the cement is industrial grade, can withstand like 20,000 pounds? They don't care about that. You got to sell them Petco Park. Did you know that when you sit down in that Petco Park and you're having your class and you're eating that food and you're seeing the sunset and you're seeing the Padres game or the baseball game or whatever concert you're looking at, see the beauty of that and you're enjoying it, you're having friends, sell them the vision and the future and the outcome that they actually want. In his case, that's what, like, that was the analogy we used. But don't sell like the lanes split after 3 hours and there's like the lines that we use are neon yellow so you can see it. And like, no one cares about that. Even though your products and services are the bridge, but most people focus on selling the bridge. I'm like, that's not it. You need to sell the future. You need to future pace them and sell the outcomes. And I know that might be a little bit of a simple analogy, but I see it all the time. Even when I did this work with a client, full month of strategy, deploying the sales page, and they're still selling services. So I think this is another area that we can hesitate, or it takes a while to grasp. The third is we talked about being afraid. Being afraid of, like, maybe you're offering. I've had clients close their largest deals in their entire company. And the client you mentioned, I feel like I'm going to get laughed out of the room with this price. And I'm like, no, you're not. So that's a different segment. We didn't talk about, like, how do you work and value price and how do you present, etc. But the whole idea is having confidence around the work that you just did. If you know, here's the solution, here's their problems that they're facing, here's what it costs not to solve their problem. You just really think about that. If they do nothing, what is that actually going to mean? Because we think of immediate terms, like, oh, they're just going to, like, suffer for a little bit and whatever. But think about, what does that mean 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line? And then what does that mean for implications and the compounded piece? One of my clients, like I mentioned, out of Canada, they mentioned that they are the almost like the firm that people come back to after they got burned by someone else, and like they're the rebound. It's like, yeah, we tried to go for the other one. They had a cheaper price, but we got burned. So it's going to cost us twice as much now to do this work. So really think about that and really standing your price, standing your positioning, standing to, like, the value that you're delivering. Obviously, you can have delusional value. I've done that before, where I've offered one thing and, like, the value per hour was about $2,000 an hour, which I can't do that for everyone. But for, like, it was, like, I think, a 4-month project. So it is doable, but there is reality and there's delusional pricing. So just be careful where you are in the spectrum. And I think maybe that could be some way to ground ourselves in the current economy. But don't be afraid to really stand into, like, here's the products that we're offering, here's the solutions, and here's the true value. I'm going to stand by that price because I know that it's going to serve you at a highest value, and I know that it's probably going to return to you 10, 15, 20, 50x.
I love it. I love it. You said earlier a comment, that some people say, some vendors, we have an honest price. I'm like, I haven't seen a dishonest price. I mean, the price is the price, they simply
Yeah.
don't do the work if you don't pay the price. But your price is your price, right? That's the value that you deliver, and you don't have to apologize for that.
Exactly. And that's so true. Like, I've never had anyone position saying, we're the most dishonest crooks ever. Like, we're going to take your, like, no one makes that positioning. So I was like, what's the differentiator here? And there's multiple ways. Like we talked about the vertical positioning. Maybe it's like one customer segment. It could be a horizontal positioning where it's primarily around the solution that you have, but it's also you. It's also your personalities, your teams, your cultures, your language. Like this podcast, you're the first of many to start a business, go to college. I'm an immigrant, first of many to go to college, finish college, start a business here in America. So, like, there's that resonance, that's that attractiveness factor, right? So it's like you leverage that also in your marketing, your sales.
Love it. And I think you said there was a last one too, which I was having a good laugh at, the analysis paralysis, because I think that's something that we
Oh yeah.
high C people can find ourselves in when you're so much in the thinking that you don't ever get to the do. Um, Maybe, Ro, you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so when you're testing your viral offering or your band-aid offering, like what is that thing? I mean, you can the analysis is putting a value towards the business case and which one matches your customer segment, but you just gotta have to you're gonna have to test it. The only way to go is to go to market and get it tested. When I say punch in the face, that's metaphorically, could be physically, but it's mostly metaphorically. But this is where you have to go in there, be okay, like be okay with getting punched in the face. Make the offer. The safest offer is to existing clients. Either interview them, or if they're in an opportunity to be upsold or cross sold, just have that conversation with them, or have your sales rep have that conversation. It's like, hey, we're thinking about offering X. I know that you went through this journey. I know that you did X, Y, and Z. Then we worked together for the last 3 years. We're thinking of doing this. I think we already passed that here with you, but what do you think about that? What's the value there? And then have them give you real world feedback. But here again, like if I have a team specifically, especially my perfectionists, and she knows who she is. I tease her with it all the time. But even there, you might have that analysis like, oh, I'm just interviewing people. It doesn't matter how many interviews you do until you get $1 in the pocket. And I don't care if it's a lot of dollars or many dollars or little dollars. As long as there's $1 there, that's where you validate it. Okay, cool. They're actually willing to exchange a value, like exchange currency with you to vote with their dollars. So that's the next leg. The first is the thinking leg. What's happening with the business value? How do we internalize it? Second is talking to the market, doing interviews, talking to your customers. The safest way are your best customers that love you. And then the third is making the sale.
I love it. Ro, you've added so much value. Oh my gosh. I think that everybody's pulling over on the road now and pulling out their notebooks to write all this down. So much good stuff. Um, you know, but we do have to wrap up today. And one of the questions that I love asking our guests is if you could leave our viewers and our listeners with one piece of advice, it can be personal or business, what would that be?
I think it's what we started with. It's own being in the present moment and owning what you can control. Because what you can control, no one else in the world can control. You're the only unique you. Your unique circumstance, your point of view, yourself, your personality, and you have the opportunity to really support and add value to a lot of people by choosing to show up just as you are.
I love it. And how can our viewers and listeners contact you? How do they learn more? How do they learn more about how to grow their businesses?
Yeah, the best way is it will be just the website. It's dogoodwork.io. That's dogoodwork.io. I for input, O for output. And I can give everyone here a free copy of the book Growth Plan, which walks through step by step some of these methodologies, and also I'll give you the links for people. It's a very long link, so I'll just give it for the show notes there.
I love it. And so what I'll do is I'll have that link in the show notes so that you guys can, when you get to a safe place, download the book and learn the 2 to 5x your business. Thank you, Ariel, for joining us today and sharing your wealth of knowledge.
This was fun. Thank you for having me.